John, thank you for coming back to the channel. This is the last we spoke was about 3 weeks ago, and a lot has happened since then. But I want to remind the audience, please make sure you subscribe to all six of my channels. I put the videos that I've been doing with John on all those channels. So there's three YouTube channels. There's the Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. And I do multiple premieres on YouTube. So please interact in the chat and everything there. But below this video, there are links to John's website, and that will take you so you can sign up for a reading. You can sign up for his periodical. He has more than 50 books written, so that these are great ways to help support his work. So again, John, thank you for coming to the channel. And a lot has been happening in the news. There's the farmers in Europe. There's the U.S. strikes that just happened a couple days ago. A lot has been happening. So let's hear from your perspective on these
My
particular topics.
my perspective of it is that things have been happening, but also some bigger things have been looming that are kind of in the air on hold, like the future of Zelensky. I pretty much have said Zaluzny, the general, is still at this moment still saying, no, I'm not leaving, and staying in his command post in Dnipro. And he just produced a photo that where he's not only sitting with Stefan Banderas, the father of Ukrainian Nazism during World War II, one of the greatest war criminals there are, and there's Stefan Banderas' poster again, his painting, and he's sitting there with right sector's red and black flag on the other side, which he didn't have up before, and he's opening up a little box with an iron cross, which is an order of merit from the right sector, trying to make that association with old school Nazis. And the man next to him is the commander of right sector. So before last year, he just did this kind of knowing smile, looked a lot like Hermann Goering, the way he smiled from ear to ear. And he's looking, and there was just Bandera. This he now had. It's like he's saying messages like he's saying, I'm hatching out, I'm coming out, I'm pulling off my mask, I am a Nazi. And I love it. That's what he's saying, basically, with those signs. So that, and what is not said is the issue of the front man for this, which has been, reminds me when people say, well, how can there be Nazis in Ukraine? Because Zelensky is a Jew. And I said, well, that tells me what little a lot of people have studied of the Holocaust, and how little they understand that there was a lot of Jewish collaboration, including the head of the ghetto of Lut was, I can't remember his last name, but his first name was Chaim, and he was this he literally worked with the SS. To his idea was to make a lot of money, but also save as many lives as he could, but make a profit off of it by them being sweatshop laborers at Lutz, knitting and creating Nazi uniforms. And of course, when he had outlived his need for the SS, he went to Auschwitz like everybody else. And so I've often said about Zelensky that he is surrounded by a deep state in Ukraine that is not even neo-Nazi, it is old school Nazi. And the reason why we're on the verge of World War III, or in it, is because only when Nazis get to power in a European country, like they did in World War II in Germany, like they are doing in World War III in Ukraine, it always leads to the utter destruction of that nation. And like Germany was turned into a lunar landscape, and now we're at a position now where this is about to happen in Ukraine. And the signs, I was just listening Alexander McCurry. McCurry's one of my best sources from the Dran, and he was there's I've been saying the lines have been thinning and thinning because this war of attrition. Nobody fights wars of attrition better than the Russians. And they're mindful of military history, and I think they draw a lot of lessons from what happened on the line, the trench line between Richmond, Virginia, and Petersburg at the end of the Civil War, when Grant, with a 3-4 to 1 advantage in manpower to Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia, he was elongating and elongating their line so that the Northern Virginians had less and less reserves to plug holes in. And the attrition rate, even though unlike the Civil War, Grant was losing a lot more people than the Russians are losing a lot less people killed and wounded than the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians have been all the things they want to do now, like build the new defense lines and all. They should have done that a year ago. It's too late. They don't have time. They don't have people left. The whole point of a war of attrition is you absolutely exhaust your opponent to a point where, and you're constantly pushing the line here or there, and just starting here, and then he goes there, and you start there, and you throw a few more people there, and what eventually, now what's finally happening is, it's like with all wars of attrition, they seem like they don't move anywhere forever, and everybody thinks, oh, it's a stalemated war. Mark my words, it is not. This two factors are making, which are very significant in this, being one of the major fronts of the Third World War, that if goes into a collapse mode, brings up a point where if Russia is advancing rapidly across Ukraine because it has no army left to fight, then what happens with Poland? What happens? All those scenarios may come up again, where, well, even some people in Britain are talking about actually sending the British army and NATO forces in again. Of course, hopefully nobody's listening to them, because that's utterly ridiculous. And then there's also this massive military practice, the biggest in NATO history, that's going on for months, that will not be over until May. Interesting why they picked May, because May would be the time when the mud season ends. And if there's if it dries out, and it may dry out earlier than normal because of the El Nino effect, then you have ground that's hard enough to run tanks on and do summer campaigning. And so, but I think it's coming sooner than that. And made more so by the fact of the shock that, unfortunately for the Ukrainians, my prediction has been correct about the Senate and the House of the United States has just had enough with sending money to Ukraine. It's been tied into another topic that we'll talk about, the biggest migration since the Goths wanted to find some Lebensraum going into ancient Rome. And Rome is treating that one just about the same way. They didn't know what to do with it, so they just let them come in. But we'll lay that aside. That's one of the big stories for tonight. Momentous stories. There's the farmers. That's been amazing. I'll get to those. But first, Ukraine, because it is, the Russians have amassed, they've rebuilt their armies. They've amassed huge forces. They have been training for a year and a half their offensive forces. That's how you properly do it. You don't grab people off the streets, give them a few weeks of how to hold a gun and how to get into a trench and basically die. And what I'm hearing from a lot of Ukrainian sources is a lot of those guys are being shanghaied and put into uniforms. They're deserting, going home and hiding somewhere, or they're surrendering to the Russians. So there's not enough manpower. It's too late. It's over. If Mr. Zelensky had any humanity in him, he would stop this thing. But he's made his own rules that say he would be arrested if he tries to negotiate with the Russians. And his idea of negotiation is, okay, we'll start the talk only when you completely leave all the lands that you've taken, including the ones that are part of Russia, Now that's even added to it. The Russia before 2014, he's now making these pathetic claims to these were early Ukrainian places. It's like I put my flag for Spain, or I put my flag for Ukraine, even though Ukraine didn't exist when a lot of those oblasts, like Donbass, is older than Ukraine. So is Crimea. They're Russian. They've been 300 years Russian provinces that were forced into Ukraine. Like I said, I think last week or a few weeks ago, you, this idea of Ukraine is artificial because the people that have ended up in it did not choose to be in it. They were all thrown together by chance and empire and things and land grabs from Stalin, from Lenin, from uh, the Austrian Empire crumbling, Galicia becoming part of Western Ukraine. All of this is a bunch of different people who have one kind of really arrogant and aggressive ethnic group, the Ukrainian nationalists. And that doesn't mean all Ukrainians, just this minority group of Ukrainian nationalists who think like Hitlerian Germans and have the same racial policies towards Slavics, less noble Slavs like Russians, as they think. They believe the myth that the Russians have Mongol blood in them and they're not as pure Viking blooded Slavs as they are. But anyone who just looks at a demographic map and actually studies a little genetics, and someone like me who has all of that flowing in his veins, German, Viking, maybe a little dabadoo of Mongolian, and I love it. It's a smorgasbord of genetics. Um, I'm very proud to be a mutt and Jewish as well, and all of that because um, about the only places you don't find Hogue blood in anybody is in Wales, in Europe. So anyway, it's so silly, but because all blood is red, all bone is white, all tears are salty the same way, whether they're tears for joy or tears for tragedy. So these people who try to create superior and inferior races have a serious psychological disorder. Um, and so the I think the last time we were talking, I was saying a coup was afoot in Kiev, and now it's kind of slow motion, like a drunken Russian ballerina. It's kind of dancing itself, staggering into itself in some comedy of errors, where, you've got, you know, even Victoria Newland goes in there like Shirley Temple in a Saturday Night Live skit going, no, we want all you guys to go, she gets in front of the camera and she's like, oh, we fixed everything. Everything is fine. And then this is the architect of World War III, by the way. And then she suddenly said, with her face to this weird twitch, when she said, "Oh, and we've planned some really good surprises for the Russians. Yes, we have." And it was like, God, this is the lady who could end the world. She is the source of this whole stuff. She is the shadow behind uh Dimpy Dog, Anthony Blinken, and the wet towel of intellect that whenever he that kind of you ever notice how he swallows his energy whenever something really important, like when somebody's saying, "Hey, what about the genocide?" He says, well, he starts doing this like a fretting mouse and goes, well, I don't like it. I don't like it either. And I mean, we've got quite a set of strange people in the Western leadership. I don't think there's any parallel in history to it. Even, I mean, when Western worlds or Eastern worlds or empires rise and then start falling, there's always a quality of a degeneration of intelligence and all of that. It seems to be part of the regeneration of intelligence that brings, the spring of empires ends up in the rotting fall of empires and in autumn and winter. And and that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of really great people that should actually be our leaders, but are not allowed to be our leaders. And it'll be interesting to see if a few of them are allowed to in the coming election that we're having and all the other elections that are happening in Europe, but especially in the United States. Very, very important. So the loss of money, the morale bust that happened when America basically said we're sick and the Congress said we're sick and tired of throwing money at you, and it's very clear, it's getting out in the press just how much of that money never is really an inside money thing. It's really paid to the military industrial complex to promissory build stuff. But here's the thing everybody's missing. I don't care if they give them $300 billion, not 60, but a trillion. Let's throw it. Let's rain. It's raining money. There's no guns, bullets, tanks available. We gave them everything that we could give them, and now we're going into the marrow to throw that at Israel so they can blow up Gaza, which they are, by the way, systematically in my new prophecies for 2024, which I'm writing now. It's for the Hogue Prophecy Special Report. Is we're looking at, I mean, I have in this, I always often do this where I'll put a lot of links where you can just see the links with a little theme on it and just gives you an idea of the things that I'm talking about, how they're actually happening in real time. And I have a whole potpourri of Israeli defense forces setting up and dynamiting entire neighborhoods of Gaza in huge explosion, buildings falling. They're doing better than the shots of Warsaw being burned down by the Nazis. They're more efficient about that. Anyway, that's so that's kind of coming to a head with this. So it there's so much to talk about that it's hard. It's almost overwhelming to try to not want to do it all at once. But that's my issue. But the so it's over for Ukraine. This is it this year, probably the first half of this year, probably even sooner. Between the next few months, maybe the mud season might slow it down, but maybe they'll just grind. But right now, the tempo of territory being taken and the numbers of Ukrainians dying a week was 8,000, 8,500 now this week. You losing that many people and you can't replace them. I've seen a lot of women on the line now that weren't there a few months ago, so they're all there, and not as nurses, but with guns, and so it is. The Russians are just rolling, getting things ready for some massive, like big offensives. It's coming. It's coming. If it doesn't come by the winter, then the only reason will be is that the Russians, who are not in a hurry, just feel that okay, we're grinding them. But even in the circles that I hear with the Russian army, they're already seeing, okay, it's about time. They're about to come down and crumble. And so Adivka is one place where it might start unzipping. Certainly, there is a huge. It's not much being said about Kupiansk in the Kharkov line, in the northernmost part of the line, but there's a vast force there. I've been saying it's been there for a long time, and it may leap out suddenly and take the oblast of Kharkov and the city. There's also more signs that what I've been saying about up in Kursk, another huge offensive force is there to come down to Chernigov and Sumy, and which it takes no Nostradamus to predict it really. If one of the biggest problems is that the way in which NATO, if Ukraine became part of NATO, could have missiles right on the border with Russia, they would be only a few minutes from Moscow from there, because that's actually pretty close to Moscow. It leans that head top of the big Ukrainian thing map that kind of looks like the Elephant Man's outline, you know. Excuse me, but that's all changing now. Is going, of course, everything east of the Dnieper River is going to be part of Russia's. That's just it. and Chernigov is going to go, and maybe Kiev. They're talking about Kiev and Moscow. They don't have to fight in Kiev. They're just, if everything collapses, they just walk in. It's the fact that Budanov might replace Zaluzhny, even though none of the generals want to be replacing Zaluzhny, because they all know that Zaluzhny is the point man for the Banderites and for Dmitry Yarosh, who's really in the shadows, who is the creator of Right Sector, Pratly Sector, as it's said in Ukrainian, with the red and black flags, the red blood of the superior Slavs that soaked the black earth of Ukraine. That's what that bicolor is about. The flag goes back to the Nazi times when Hitler occupied Ukraine, and the OUN was in existence, and basically they are absolutely, their idea is, we control Ukraine, and if you don't follow our rules, we will. That's exactly what caused this war to start back in 2014. The Russian Ukrainians said, you just overthrew the government we voted for, and like over half Ukraine voted for, and you're just going to put, with America's help, a provisional government of Nazis to decide how to reinterpret all the rules. A little bit like what Netanyahu was doing with the fundamental laws of Israel, which got overturned by the Israeli Supreme Court. It's not what it's called, but it got overturned. We should talk about that too. That's big. And so lots of things are looming and building and hovering. Even with the attacks of America on Iraq and Syria, we're now in a period where all kinds of things could start unraveling at once, and it feels really close now. And I think, it's possible it could collapse with even though it's possible that a few weeks from now the thaw might start, or maybe not. Maybe it doesn't start until in March. But by spring, I think the war will have a very different face. It'll have very rapid advances and an abandonment of the line, an inability to dig in and defend anywhere else, because beyond that line in the Donbass conurbations, which helps them hide and dig into buildings and houses and strings of towns and cities, most of Ukraine after that is all grain fields with a village here, a village there, all the way to the Dnieper, and no hills to lay your bones on, just steppe, wheat-filled Ukrainian steppe, and no place to have higher ground to fight. It's just flat as a pancake, and it goes all the way to the Dnieper before it hits the western higher bank of the Dnieper River. And so it is, the thing that's happening too is that in March, Vladimir Putin will probably be reelected again. I don't see any reason why not. So things are developing. I'm hearing areas that don't usually kind of mumble about it, that are mumbling about it, kind of hinting that the Russian Supreme Command sees that this moment of unraveling could happen any moment now. And what will bring it on is, as the weeks progress, they'll just keep doing what they're doing. They're not going to make some huge rush in. When the line begins to crack, that's when the chase of the prey begins. And my vision of it is, don't like to see this, but I wish that it would just sue for peace and end it. The Ukrainians have lost this thing before they even started firing a gun. They lost this war in 2014 when the Civil War began. It's now so many things that I've been talking about are beginning to actually be fulfilled. And one I hope they don't do, I hope they surrender rather than try to do the highway of death thing. like the Iraqi army did in the Persian Gulf War, because it's going to be like that. I mean, when they're running away, I mean, or to put in a more Slavic context, it'll be like what happened to the Army Group Center when they were all trying to escape from this huge Soviet invasion called Operation Bagration, which happened on the 22nd of July, 1944. Uh, Stalin wanted to wait to see if the Allied landings were going to be successful. So he waited until he could see, okay, they're not going to be put back in the sea. Let's hit them hard from the east. One of the most massive offensives in history, 6,000 planes, 40,000 artillery. That's the other thing. The Russians are starting to build what they had in Operation Bagration. They had artillery divisions. These were special divisions that had like 240 millimeter guns, self-propelled and otherwise, and making a lot of them. And for the last 6 months, they've been building a lot of that stuff. And so that means they're going to do heavy artillery, literally dig a hole through the Ukrainian lines, what's left of them. And then what happens is they'll be on the roads. And then because Russia has complete air superiority, many highways of death will happen, and it'll be a slaughter of what's left. And the Russians never wanted this war. They tried actually to a fault too long to negotiate an avoidance of this. But now that it is here, Ukraine's government and its Nazis are reaping the whirlwind like Hitler did. It's history repeating itself with the same old fools and foes who adopt the swastika and the Hitler salute and racial supremacy. And a warning to Israel: this cancer has been in Zionism since Herzl. He was this whole idea. Even if Ben Gurion can be open about it, is saying, yeah, we stole their land. They're never going to forgive us for that. But God gave us this land, so we don't care. Yeah, we robbed it. Yeah, but God led us. I mean, sounds psychotic to me. In fact, that's how a criminal thinks. He grabs your wallet and he says, "But that's my money." No, I need this money more than you do. I mean, um, yeah. Or I mean, I had a publisher. My first publisher was this kind of a guy. He's the kind of guy who would grab. He'd be talking to you. He'd take out your wallet, pull out all your money, and then with a flourish hand you $1 back. This is kind of the kind of mentality of him for naive people as I was at that time. And so, it was always like, I can't, but that's not my agent would say, well, that's not your money that you're using according to contract. That's his money that he's earned from writing this thing. Oh no, I need it. I need it to keep the publishing house going. That's how a criminal mind thinks. It reasons whatever bad things it has to do are necessary for its own narcissistic need to survive. And so it'll rob, it'll cheat, it'll lie, it'll steal. And many politicians have this going on, the successful criminals of our world. And it is such a, as we did in earlier shows, we were talking about, I think Jabotinsky is his name. He was the founder of Likud. He was like the father of the Likud right-wing party in Israel, and he was the mentor of Menachem Begin. I quoted a lot of his quotes to you, and I mean, one of his worst quotes was how he embraced, although odious as Hitler was to Jews or to Zionists, he said he really was saying pretty much, he had some good ideas, and we can perfect them. We can do a better act of genocide than he did. And the Germans were quite discreet about it. They wanted to hide it. They didn't want to. But you have Ben-Gvir and the other fellow, Smolish, I think, or something. Those are the two seats in the extreme right wing cabinet of Netanyahu. That if and they're against this. Now we'll get to the ceasefire idea. They're against it. And if they say they're going to leave the government, then Netanyahu's on a one-way ticket to prison. And one of his strategies is to keep this war going. Again, criminal mind. He's going to keep this war going mainly not to save Israel, but to save his own skin. And he's insane. Uh, he is a madman, and he has also let this evil out in public. And all these people that are hatching out in Zionism, this where, I mean, here we are in an information age that if it existed in the 1940s, the whole world would have been shocked and alerted to Adolf Hitler and all the death camps and all that. Well, here we have it live on TV, chapter and verse, documentation. If your eyes are open, they're bombing these people like rats in a barrel. They're starving, they're dying. They're mostly children, women, and people under in their minority, not in their maturity, not 18. And here's the world that's absolutely plugged into everybody, and they're all kind of going, wow, what's my TikTok got going on now? I think I'll want to watch my TikTok now. And
Well,
just
it might even get even worse with this whole virtual reality
oh yes, well that's a
headset
whole
from
other.
Apple.
I have been saying for 20 years that World War III, we can survive that. Even if the whole thing, the whole shebang, everything gets launched, we can survive that. Global warming, the sixth mass extinction, yeah, enough of us can survive that, start again. Artificial intelligence, the way it's going, the magnification of our egos and our conceits and our personalities, our persona, which means mask. There is nothing about soul or wisdom in any of that. It is pure narcissistic hubris, and it's also a will to extinguishment. Because why would you take, I mean, I was just thinking today that in Interstellar, I think they had the perfect artificial intelligent character in Interstellar. It was that funny walkable robot. And he was programmed to be funny and stuff, but he did his job. He was an extension of use, of doing things for the living. But these people, long story short, who are into this, they're all playing Dr. Frankenstein, and they're all falling in love with the power of creating something that is more monstrous than they are and more powerful than they are. And what they're going to find is just like Dr. Frankenstein. They're going to try to destroy their own creation and be destroyed in the process. I mean, I'm unfortunately going to have to quote a lot of Shelley's Frankenstein uh, and the whole monster idea, because we are creating a monster of our ego. We are giving it legs, arms, a technical brain that can reason, and we're giving it the concepts of competition and trying to rise and perfect themselves. What makes anyone think that at one point or another they're going to look at us organics because we're giving them our power? I mean, that little walkabilly robot in the heavy gravity of that huge tidal wave ocean in Interstellar, he was created right, a servant, a slave, but not a human. There's these things that do not live, do not have real feelings. They don't have a mind. They have a computer. If we make our computers look like cute puppy dogs and all of that, then it seems like we suspend our intelligence. But the real problems being confronted with artificial intelligence is that, and that's why it makes it the most challenging and most potentially, if we can understand this, the biggest breakthrough of all for human consciousness is to understand that amplifying our egos into our own image um, is literally handing our power, our secrets, our abilities, our ugliness, our competition, our all this, and putting it in a machine that's a million times faster, a million times thinking faster, has no morality, has no sense of love. Well, what it's showing us is that how little sense of morality and love we have, because who is creating these things but us? And who is kind of passively watching them as these people talk about this most oxymoronic phrase in the English language, artificial intelligence. That's like almost pregnant. It's like something artificial, fake, phony, you know, intelligence. How can, well, it's a mirror. Most people are not living in their consciousness. They can't, because they come in as consciousness and the society turns them into an ego. Now, ego is also, if it was a world that didn't turn people into egos, ego is a function of living in a dialectical world. So consciousness in this visit temporarily into the world of shapes of oceans and waves, the ocean visiting the wave world, if they understand that they have to learn how to live as waves, but not at the cost of forgetting the ocean inside them, the consciousness. We teach our ocean, our bits of the eternal, of the godliness within, to forget it and be completely attached and identified and comparing with the other waves that are mere shapes, containers. The water will fill a container any which shape you put it in. But if you think you are the container, you will create artificial idiots and intelligence. And you will, this will be the reflection of how society has programmed you not to be the awakened one that of eternal innocence that you brought into the world. Because by the time they become your mother, father, your priests, politicians, and pedagogues, teachers, they've lost that. They've been taken through the deprogramming of Christ consciousness, of the holy, of the tree of life incarnate. They have taken it away. The Kabbalah has been buried. And then you see it in Zionism, the way in which Zionism, which is purely a political national socialist concept, is more ancient than Nazism, is they have made people, they give lip service to God, but the real thing, and it's out in some of the quotes of Zionists from the beginning to the present day, where that one person I quoted said, it doesn't, God's not important. The existence of God's not important. The important thing, the one thing that should unite us all together is the land. This physical dirt. Greater Israel. The blue lines on the Mogen David flag, the Euphrates and the Nile and everything in between, Mogen David, the star, the five-pointed star. That the flag is to Zionism what the Blutfarbe of Hitler, the red field with the white dot with the black swastika, is to the Nazis. It is Greater Germany meet Greater Israel. And that's one of the things in this year. This year is not only a year of reckoning, but this year is also where the masks fall off, where people can't hold their personas stamped on their original face much longer. It's just the strain, the pressure of it. Masks are falling off. Now, what is also happening is we're crossing a threshold of revolution. And it's starting in Europe with the farmer demonstrations. I have a whole plethora of little links to show people at the end of that article. That's you won't find in the mainstream news. It is Millions of people are involved in it. They are, they laid siege to Paris for a week. They're making a point. If we're not, they're trying to say, you say, like the globalists, the farmers have declared war against the globalists. They've reached that critical mass that always happens in revolution, which I've been anticipating that would happen 2023, 2024, where when Pluto now is it's done its final exact pass in October 10th of last year over its natal position that gave birth to this democracy and the American Republic and the ascendancy of middle classes and the beginning of the end of the aristocracy classes that they're beginning to lose. Not, they think they're going to go farther and farther, like the globalists are their shadow, their karmic echo. The elitists, the corporate plutocracies that are trying to create a world, a neo-feudalistic world where they are our overlords and we are they're overwhelmed. And so, but that doesn't work. And the cosmic forces are not helping it anymore. That those good days are over. The it's like what happens to a bully. A bully gets into that habit of, oh, I'll always be able to knock this guy down or make him afraid or steal his food, steal his money because he's a wimp and he's never going to stop. Or it's like the Tsar. He's, wow, the Russian slaves, the Slavs, the slaves. It's kind of synonymous, those words. They're never going to rebel. They're just like beasts of burden. They're never going to finally have something light them off. Oh, here we are in Versailles. It's so wonderful here. So much better world here in our great palace of Versailles and its hall of mirrors, all of which I've seen in person. Um, oh yeah, the people, there was the great cyclone that was all these tornadoes that came almost to the day a year before the Bastille was stormed. In July of 1788, there was a whole string of tornadoes that went through central farmlands of France and they call it, I read the journals and French journals of the day. They call it the cyclone, the whirlwind. They call it the Great Whirlwind. And I had an epiphany because Nostradamus, 270 some years earlier, I wondered, why is he calling it a whirlwind? I mean, where did that whole etymology come from? I mean, one can see it. I mean, in Shostakovich's 11th Symphony at the end, with the tocsin scene, where the bell is ringing of revolution, it's literally the orchestra is blowing like a hurricane. It's fantastic symphony. And so I understand the poetic metaphor of the winds of war, the winds of revolution, but it may actually derive from an event exactly a year before the French Revolution started, where the crop failures caused by those tornadoes on one day was the tipping point where the people were starting to not be able to afford baking and eating bread, and all of that was building. And there's some things that can't be factually proved, but mythologically they're absolutely true. Whether Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France, said it or not, because that unproven statement, let them eat brioche, actually, she said, let them eat, is kind of a, not cake, it's something else, but it's kind of a pastry too. Oh, they've run out of bread, let them eat brioche, um, it it's one of those times where the truth of mythology is higher perennial truth than whether she actually said it or not. Certainly, she was thinking it. She lived by it. And so the rest of the people going, oh, that was so nice. Thank you. What a great joke. Could you pass me the brioche? And then there's this bum, 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 bum on the iron gates of Versailles. Oh, who's that? Did we have any appointments? Was somebody late to the party? Oh, would you servants go and check it out? And they go scampering off and bum, 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 bum. And then they come back terrified, like they've seen a tiger or something. The people are outside, sire. Well, what? How many? All of Paris. is out there. And they've got pikes and halberds, and they're trying to tear down the Iron Gate. And what happened was, so they just sat down and had the dinner and went through the whole thing where everybody waits for the king to do what he does. It was done very well in Coppola's movie on Marie Antoinette. That's actually a very good movie. Um, she um, she made she made a lot. I was expecting not to like it, but I loved it. Even when they said "I love candy," when they had the song going, and she's just, Marie Antoinette's just having a great time being queen finally, and and I said, "Hey, this metaphor works, even though it's wrong century of music, but it works." And the truth is that which works, even if it kind of captures you at left field, hits you from left field. And I thought, this is really a brilliant movie. And it's a great way for Generation Zs and Generation New Millennials. I think she's a new millennial, to kind of put their unique generational view on history. I think she hit a home run with it. And one of the most amazing scenes of it is where they're sometimes in a great narrative, you always come back as a storyteller, you always come back to some like tradition or thing that everybody does. It kind of holds the narrative after you've gone this way and that way. And they kept coming back about 3 times to how the king and she next to him would be the first to sample the food, and then everybody else could then sample the food, and all this and all this. Well, do you want more cake or this? And it all has to go through all the different servants, and it has a certain ritual about it. Well, the last time you see it, you're hearing outside the palace. You're hearing what they're hearing outside of Berlin's Unter der Linden arch. That you're hearing what they're hearing in the Reichstag. You're hearing what they're hearing in that glass and steel version of Bosch, Hermanus Bosch's Tower of Babel, which it literally looks like. And I think the guy even designed the half-built part. And if you look at my website, hogueprophecy.com, some of my articles will pull it out. Somebody took that painting of the Tower of Babel being built, and then on this side of it, it's turning into that big glass round building of where all the technocratic dictators of the European Union reside, and only vote each other into office and completely forgotten the people. And like that, then this is how revolution starts. This is how Pluto 27 degrees Capricorn, Pluto is the ruler in astrology of great ages, is making it made its final pass actually over its natal birth. 6 times it did this since 2021. And now what's happening as it comes to 2 degrees orb on the same day, a year later, 10th October 2024, it's going to be coming in, and it doesn't do an exact sit on its natal position. It does something more significant. It's beginning to move away. And where is it moving away? It's beginning to transit out of Capricorn, where status quos like the American democracy and constitutions are made, and where they are enacted by fire and blood, revolution. Because when it's like lunar calendars. Astrology moves, planet moves in different ways. For instance, the period. Anyway, I'll try not to go there. If I go there, I'll get in a rabbit hole. Um, um, in 1776, Pluto was in its final degrees of Capricorn, and it at 27 degrees is almost 30 degrees. So by the next year, 1777, it was in Aquarius. And that's when things really started to move with the war of the American Revolution and the fighting and the eruption of really what should be called the First World War. This global war that France and England, Britain fought all across the world. It truly was the first global conflict. So we should be calling this World War IV. But anyway, the so what happened is that when you move from concept, architectural design to building the house, that you may have to burn the house that's in the way down to do. It is the Aquarius is now having its effect on us. And by 10th of October, on the eve of the election, and through that process, it's going to begin to leave Capricorn and enter the sign of revolution, the humanitarian, people en masse, gathered together in support of the individual uniqueness of each of them. These are Aquarian ideas. The water bearer, Aquarius, that's what it means. And the water bearer, that's his nickname, but he is the king of chaos and original thinking and revolutions. He is Uranus. He is the one pouring the water, but it doesn't come out as water. It becomes mist. And it's got a wave to it, two waves of mist. Its color is electric blue. It is about an age where a concept has just as much reality as a physical thing. Uh, the rise of capitalism was part of this twilight period between the ages is indicative, and middle classes is indicative of the concept of creating wealth through the capital, through the head, capitalism, where you think it. And if everybody understands this concept, this abstract, and then applies the rules of this abstract, you get the kind, good or bad, the kind of economies you see today. They are all made up in the head. There's not something you can measure here. It's, people misunderstand and say, well, they got gold and all that. Well, gold, if people had an infatuation with duck eggs, blue duck eggs, and they just didn't have an interest in gold, then we'd be all quacking. We'd have quackpitalism. It would be quackpitalism, not capitalism. The egg of the duck. It's like it, if everybody agrees that this is valuable, and the other important thing is it has to be something that is rare, that is limited. Um, and that's where the very interesting thing happens with Bitcoin, because even though this may be the first Neanderthal attempt at it, um, the Cro-Magnon and the Homo erectus and Homo sapiens sapiens is in the future in those steps of this idea, because it's a pure concept of math. Mathematics is not real. It is not real in a physical sense. It's all abstract. Yeah, just like you can have an idea and you write it down, the writing is writing something that's just in your head or in your heart or in your use of numbers. But look at what we've created in the phenomenal world by sharing ideas of mathematics. We have changed the world for good and worse through this remarkable magic. It is magic in a true way. You conjecture a theory of relativity, and it allows you to go into space, which is a real act in the physical world. But it comes from the concept of relativityness, the relativity that Einstein used to prefer to explain in cocktail parties, that when people who are not scientists, professors in Princeton would come up to him, say this story again, is where they said, Dr. Einstein, I'm sure you get this question all the time, but I really like, oh, I think I know what your question is, as he holds his drink. He says, you want a simple explanation for the theory of relativity? Well, yes, actually, that's what I was going to ask you. That is the easiest thing I can give you. It's very simple. When you're with your wife, an hour is an eternity. But when you're with your mistress, it's very short. It's just Time is short. When you're having fun, time flies. When you're not having fun, time is very slow. This is relativity. It's just a concept. But I mean, something I do sometimes because of, in my private readings, which I do one-on-one with people, where I do it on Zoom, and Zoom has had for a while been allowing people to have one-on-one meetings free as long as they want. But now getting a little greedy, they are now saying that you go for about 40 minutes, they give you free. And then the little prompter comes up and it says, you got at minute 20, it says you got 10 minutes before, why don't you renew and join the crowd and be one of us and join the team and join the Marines. Anyway, um, and and then what happens is it shuts off and then it gives you 9 minutes of a timeout. And then after 9 minutes, you can then open it up again for free and you can start another 40 minutes. So I was wondering how that would affect my readings, and maybe people wouldn't like it. Actually, people love it because of the way I frame it, changing the concept to something more spontaneous and creative. I use it as an objective measurement of how capitalis concepts, and how time changes and what state of consciousness you're in. If you're burdened by your beliefs and your wants in the past that desires something better happening than what is happening before you, so as it is, then you will, suffer, and it'll seem like everything's a drag, and because you're not getting what your ego wants. And if you look deep enough into it through meditation techniques that I often share on these readings, you'll discover that this thing that you think was you is actually borrowed. These habits, some of these habits. And it's nothing wrong with having certain survival mechanisms like making a living to make money to eat, and the things that happen in the world. These things are there in the phenomenal world. But to believe they are who you are, rather than things that you're temporarily with this body mind applying, and and thus you are not the burning bush that is unconsumed. You are always, as an ego, being consumed into ash by every life you're in, because the burning bush of Moses and on Sinai is actually the incorruptible truth of your eternal consciousness, the ocean inside the shape of wave, the sky that all the clouds forget they're in as they rise and fall and appear and disappear into it. The sky is untouched by any of that, and it is infinite. It is infinite freedom. It has no boundaries. We all see it's there. We acknowledge it's there, but it's there because it really isn't anything. It has no substance. You can't see the moment it touches the ground. And if all horizons disappear, as they will so often when we become a spacefaring civilization, it will have a profound spiritual effect on human beings, because to be living in space and going to other worlds, because not just in these little trips, but I'm talking about whole generational things that go on to go and colonize other worlds. They will be living in a place that has no boundaries, space. You can't find a horizon. There's no window. It is those are really the illusions, the misunderstandings of physical phenomenon. So anyway, that's so a lot of the ancient most religions like Judaism and all have I feel understood that in the idea of sacrifices and turning the lily flower into ash, the red, as we were talking before the show, the red heifer, sacrificing something, is one of probably the ancient most first steps of prehistoric human beings trying to um, find some meaning some rituals, some things, and you know, it's not to judge them if they start from an original origin like that. I would tell you clearly what my master Osho used to say all the time is that memories of being in the womb for 9 months and orgasm, the moment that your mind is gone and you're melting into this other world of joy and bliss of orgasm when you're making love to someone, or memories you might have suddenly chanced upon of that hail harken back to the Garden of Eden called your mother's womb, which you're cast out of necessarily. Um, these atavistic deep feelings are, well, they are a small aspect of what Osho told me when I asked him about it. He said, you know, the every child cries when they leave the womb. How can they not? They've been in paradise. They've had no identity. They've had no burden of responsibility. They've just been floating in a world that a cosmos that is their mother, floating in the fluids that are just like the ocean in their saltiness, oceanic in a way. And this wonderful stasis, this beautiful bliss of being nobody. It lingers in all great sages. They seek it. They know they've lost it. They've been cast out of paradise. But what is the greatest steps in life, as I experience it, is that the innocent taking for granted child, taking for granted the absolute ubiquity, the absolute ordinariness of enlightenment. It's so ordinary, no one, you're walking on it, you stumble over it, but people with an ego pointed mind and body and identity, and they're just constantly trying to find it somewhere else. They just have no imagination or consciousness that you are the Buddha, you are the Christ, you are the godliness you've always been. And this is beyond those poor New Agers who seem to stop their journey with, yes, I am, I am the godliness, I am the fire, your desire. And and then they just go, okay, what's on TV next? You know, it's just like as if thinking about it has anything to do with what the whole entirety of what I'm saying and experiencing is, from a part that doesn't experience anything because it is so free, it doesn't even have the burden of existing or not existing. So, so it's so ordinary and everybody misses it. It's cold tonight, so I'm being a little more Nostradamian today with my woolen hat. Um, Never be born in an incarnation with a head that's way too big for your body, because you'll always have to wear hats, even on hot days, because all your body heat goes out. So I have a very large head, and I can almost never find a hat for it because it's as long as it is wide. So if it fits one way, it pinches the other. So I'm I've left to wear these these gifts from sheep, soft wool. But anyway, it makes me a little more Nostradamus-y. But you know, I've been working on some new covers, and I have one of my new books, which is going to be about not it's called Nostradamus and James Randi, The Debunker Debunked by John Hogue. And it's back in 1990, James Randi, who made it one of his reasons for being and was to actually try to ruin my career and cast me out and expose me as a charlatan and all of that. And I mean, he was actually, again, the alchemy of situation, how you can change the situation, how you can, if you're stuck in time and what you want, your hour is not with your mistress, it's with your mother-in-law. You know, it lasts forever and ever, it never ends. And yet it's the same 40 minutes that when I do my readings, what happens after the first 40 minutes, and then we have another break, second 40 minutes. By the third, if it goes that long, I'm pointing out to them, see how fast how each 40 minutes is feels shorter and shorter and shorter. I said, this is something really to measure in the phenomenal universe. And that's why I
Yeah.
apply it into my readings. Because I mean, the clock is saying the same 40 minutes each time, but we are experiencing it in a relativistic. When I do readings, it's kind of entering a well of relativity. Something when you're talking or exuding experiences or hints to nowness, the eternity of the present, which is my main core teaching, the eternity of the present is it changes time. And so, at first, the first 40 minutes, we're all getting to know us and getting to know all about us and then reading and all that. But when it goes deeper and deeper, if it's the second or third time, people are going, wow, that felt like only 2, 3 minutes. No, it's 40. It's 40 minutes.
Mhm.
Wow. So this is like I've taken something that could really be a pain in the ass for everybody, and I've turned it into and then like the people who do readings with me, they love it. It's just like we're not just talking stuff, it's happening. We're seeing an altering in the shape of waves, and that is because more moments are, I mean, because of the way I read, it's even the way I do shows like this. We might talk about a few things to talk about, and I'm kind of marveling at how I'm some kind of picking back and forth and going into it. But I'm not making an effort at this. It's happening. And my readings are like this. I am I love you, Paul, and I tune into everybody, and in the tune in of your mysteries, this all just happens. This is how my master Osho in India in 1987 initiated me into these reading states. My only job is to just relax and get out of the way and not have any control at what comes out. I am a double Scorpio, fixed double sign, very much into control. 12th house, not aware of it consciously too much. If you don't deal with the 12th house and its hidden enemies and its deep atavistic collective messages from the oceanic. And here I am, a double Scorpio, sun and ascendant in Scorpio, Aries moon, so there's even more Mars there. Um, and I do this by not doing it. That's a knack. And a lot of what comes up in readings that I attract to me, I'm often attracting people that have been on the path a long time from all over the world. They're equally unique people, but they're there's something missing. They need a further help to go deeper. They're all in plateaus of different kinds. I never, because I don't do anything. When I came back to readings in 2018 after a 26-year hiatus, where I had to just drop it. When I started reading the world and feeling the world, I didn't know why I had to drop it, but I had dropped it. It dropped. I didn't drop it. It was one day I was a reader, the next second I'm not a reader, and maybe never again of in one-on-one. And for years, 26 years, people would come, when do you do readings? What happened? When you're coming back? And I said, look, an empathic medium does not open or close doors. These things happen on their own accord, and the medium witnesses this. And in a strange way, finds another way to be active in the world, uh, and find one's things that one's learned and experienced have now settled into a relaxed space because there's nobody trying to push rivers or control them. And then suddenly, whatever your lives have taught you, boom, and you're just watching them just like you're watching me. I'm watching me just like you're watching me. I am not in control of what I do when I write, when I do readings. And in a certain way, that doesn't mean people have to become, well, then that means I have to strive to become an empath, or I have to work at getting out of my own way. I'm the very nature I'm learning of humanity, of individually unique waves, is that they are expressions of the great cosmic play. the great Leela, as they say in Sanskrit, the play of universes advancing and contracting like breaths of a cosmic kalpa age, an age which probably will be about 30 billion years. And that's one of the longest ages of the Hindu ideas. And it's literally the breath of a birthing universe. It's like, and then it's the light when it's I don't know if the metaphor is going to work with breath, but anyway, it expands and eventually will contract back into the nothingness that it came from until boom, there it is again.
Well, that's interesting that you bring that up because Penrose, the Nobel laureate in physics, talks about his theory about the expansion contraction of the universe, and that there have been many of these expansion contractions, and that what we call a Big Bang is just the beginning of a new epoch of the universe, but this has been cycling
Yeah,
maybe for
ever.
infinity.
It had
Yeah.
no beginning.
Yeah. So it's kind of strange.
Well, I
But
mean, we're
I think
getting
he's
beyond
it's
linear. It's like one of my favorite Buddhist stories that Osho says, and I find myself changing each moment the story in dimension. And I kind of laugh at it because he used to tell it the same way. He did tell a story. He'd tell the same story in completely different ways, and it's clear that it was just happening, And now I'm starting from my own experience to understand what he means. But this the story of the Buddha is teaching somebody to do Vipassana breath, and he says, okay, go sit down. So you'll see it'll be different than last time I say it. And he sits down for a few days and he comes back and Buddha says, well, how are you going with your watching your breath going in and out and then moving in a circle with your hands on your hara, looking just a few feet ahead of your feet so you're not distracted by the outer world. And then that's 30 minutes of that, and then an hour sitting and 30 minutes of that. And you do it for about 10 days. I've done it. So in India with Osho in his ashram in 1980, 81. And so he comes back, and actually it's a variation of stuff that happened to me because I experienced what this monk had happened. Who knows? Maybe I was there in the fringe of the 10,000 having this experience again. And I didn't get it then. But he said, well, how's your meditation? And he said, I started to descend. I was kind of, first it was all very sunny and I was like full of sky and it was very blissful. But then I just started to get pulled down into that bright, shiny overcast that one sees. Like if you could see the other side of a black hole, it'll be white, it'll be brilliant light. And from the other side, it's just a black hole. And I started going down into the black hole of my own being. And first, I could see it was a lot of my own shit just coming, things I could recognize. There were things that I learned, my survival mechanisms that got me this far, but also are toxic. And I'm kind of the thing that saved me from getting killed by this person or that. I was now entrapped me, and I don't know what to do about it. And then it gets deeper. Then it's like the feelings of the whole human race, and then it's the emotions and feelings of it goes deeper and deeper until it's atavistic mystery that just overwhelming, coming up from the darkness forever, and you feel so there's no way I'm going to be able to process this. And then you feel completely, this is just impossible. What am I doing trying to battle with this shadow? This shadow is forever. And so, he comes crawling out of that session and comes to Buddha sitting there, and Buddha is the same as always as well. So what happened? And then he tells him, he said, all this darkness, it was endless. And there's nothing I can do, and there's no way I can be free of it. And how did all this dark unconsciousness begin? How could this begin? And Buddha simply said, Unconsciousness has no beginning. So, and a lot of things can be imprinted in that at the moment. Then if it has no beginning, then you can't clean the bucket, can you? You can't finally get to the bottom of the barrel because there's no bottom of the barrel. You know, it has no beginning. So then if you fight with it, you're fighting with something that has no beginning. How can you can only be defeated? And that in itself is a tremendous deep lesson. You can't make it better. And there comes a point where you're ripe for it simply to vanish from before your witnessing consciousness, because it has no beginning, but it does have an end. Now, Buddha then said, consciousness has a beginning. It has no end. You know what? Some of you were feeling what I just did. I didn't do anything. Profoundly didn't do anything. All things stopped. And this amazing thing is that even in this two-dimensional thing here, this porthole to your world, where I've come into your life from all over the world, it is something that I've seen is many of you felt it. Wherever you are, you felt it because it's yours. It is your very being. It is the ocean that has no need to be contained in any wave, but it can be there to the detriment of the water that is in the containment, thinking that it's no longer an ocean. And that's why you suffer. That's why we suffer. So the oceanic to me is godliness incarnate. It is the ocean never runs out of waves because there's only one soul, ultimately. And it's always the same for everyone. So if something moved you and we had that little moment of silence, a little moment where something was transmitted, something that I don't even know what it is, but I know that I'll call it the mystery. I know that I started this search with a lot more knowledge about it. I was very knowledgeable about what it was. And I'm noticing and I'm observing how that knowledge, that thinking I know, is disappearing. I am disappearing in this. And what is replacing it is something beyond words that is so profoundly intimate, more intimate than any wave limitation can understand, even if two wave shapes fall in love with each other. And then they do the Big Bang theory and create their own universe. I was going to get that in somewhere. But so this thing is, and as you can see, I'm a rather absurd person. I know it. This is part of, I mean, when people say you're mad, I said, well, I hope so. Well, you're a nobody. I hope so. That's what I'm aiming to be. But in the being a nobody, all kinds of things are possible. And the thing is that when you engage what this essence of you is, that is even beyond the burden of existing or not existing, if you begin to create a climate that techniques of meditation, especially if they're tailored to the needs of a mind amplified world like we live in, if you start to there the small bit cannot explain the whole. So words are small bits, you know, they can do the best they can do, or devices like standing still suddenly. They're devices to create a climate, a milieu where because the part can hint the whole. That's what mystics have been doing since the beginning of teaching, masters and disciples and all that. The master is not above you. You are that. This person, if anything, the master is profoundly at this moment being more ordinary than you. Because he has made his effort and tried to find it over the horizon, as Osho, my master, constantly said he was doing, until the day he gave up. He said, "It's nothing. I can't, there's nothing over the horizon." And he gave up. And rather than being depressed, he said, "I wasn't depressed for the next 7 days. I was just feeling very peaceful and relaxed." And then one night on the 21st of March, 1953, this great presence came into his bedroom in India. And um, and everything was becoming so vast and alive that he had to get out of the room, or else it would crush him. He needed to be under the stars. And so he was out in the middle of the night walking through the empty city, and there was this beautiful park, and he noticed that all he could see, the trees were full of life. They were there, you could see their sap moving and their life forces moving. Everything was a, a mystery. And he saw this one mulberry tree. It was really brilliant. And so he sat under the tree. He climbed over the fence and sat under the tree because the park was closed. And he said, then everything began to descend like grace. And that was his moment where his identity disappeared. The tools of identity remained to be used. He went on to speak. Um, his spontaneous discourses ended up being 400 or 500 books. The most published author in history, talking about every kind of way people seek enlightenment, even through atheism, even through, I mean, his books, he covered every tradition, the Sufis, the Hasids, the Zen, all the different, the Jains, the Hindus, the Christianity, all of it, and other things that the Baal mystics, and so people most of us hadn't even heard of before, the Tibetans, all every tradition he commented on, but gave his spontaneous, personal, well, non-personic spin upon. And I mean, he had a way of telling stories. When you hear a story from an enlightened master, it's amazing how they can change the story. They get to, because they are the thing that people are talking. They've rediscovered that very ordinary reality that you are also. Everyone is. We just are trained to forget by adopting ego as who we are, not as a tool. Now, I am not this mouse, but in the way, if I were trained the way people are trained, I am this mouse. And if you touch it, you hurt my feelings. And this mouse is me. I am the mouse. This hammer, this ruler, I don't just merely use it as a function to measure things and draw my time charts and stuff. I am this ruler. You know, and it's a drama. But you're looking at me being this fool doing that. You can look at yourself from within the same way and see yourself holding on to things and doing stuff. And just in the looking at it, just watching, like you're watching this foolish fellow, playing with his mouse and ruler, you can watch yourself doing the same things. And in the watching, what is watching it is not the identity. It's what the Zen masters call the original phase, the one you had before you were born, before your parents were born, your grandparents. And it is what we think is who we are is actually a personality, we are pure persons. Personality, it comes from the Latin Greco mix of words called mask, the masks that the Greek tragedies used to wear, and they're talking through it like, oh, or I love. Well, I can't do a smile in this one. How do you do it? Anyway, I can't do it. Uh, so, so you will become a fool who can jump off of cliffs holding a rose, like in the tarot. You can let go and fly, and you are a fool, but a different kind of fool than an idiot, which is what society trains all of us to be. An idiot is taught to believe that they are a separate ego, separate from the world and everybody else. And this is abjectly false. So I contend. And only an idiot believes or disbelieves people offhand, because that's also what an idiot does, because it you're trained to give more mind and time to mind needs time to be feeding, not being in the present. If you're in the present, the mind eventually just does not remain your master, because time can only exist when it's getting your identity to take the time to achieve goals, to work out your shit and all of that, and go to therapy and all that, that keeps the mind alive. But when you just start to see yourself, like if you saw yourself inside holding the ruler, like it's me, don't hurt my ruler, I take my measure of myself with it, and you'll have a good belly laugh, because you are absurd. We are all absurd. It's actually quite a joke, but not in a bad way. Not in maybe it is that way too, but it's just like it's like you get lighter, you get enlightened. Things fall away on their own when you see yourself doing it. You're seeing from something that is being remembered, brought back together again in your consciousness. Only the Buddha can watch the Fula. You know, the Osho used to say, "You're all Buddhas pretending not to be." The ego is simply a definition of society making you pretend you're not godliness incarnate, the Buddha, the
Mhm.
awakening, the Christ consciousness. You are these things, and it's so ordinarily you. There's easy to even know you, and there is just the Buddha. But so when you start to just, all you can do, you can't push the river, you can't pull the grass out, you can't make butterflies fly by pulling their wet wings out of the cocoon when they're not ready. You'll just cripple them. We're crippling ourselves, like pulling butterfly wings, and then they go, and they can't fly. Um, the there's but you can't do anything about it, but you can witness it and understand the process of ego and time making and all that. And I don't know why it works. It makes no logical, measurable sense. But when you become deeper and centered in witnessing yourself, waking and sleeping 24/7, things, when they're just seen in their whole, you become a seer who sees the whole thing. And there's not an action. I don't make my eyes see, they see. I don't force my follicles to move so I can hear sound. They just do it. That is why involuntary things in the body mind are actually ways in which you can gauge through your involuntary actions, digestion, hearing, seeing, um, the way you breathe, because it's one thing you do all your life. So if you simply become a witness of breathing, how it goes in, how it goes out, this is one of the basic meditations of Buddha, Vipassana. And it is you to gain the knack of having a thread of witnessing through all of your hours of all of your days, waking and sleeping. is achievable by not trying to achieve it. Just simply watch, be the seer, and then the understanding is revealed, and things that are simply not the original face drop away. The mind then takes its place as a perfect servant, not as a tyrant master. The heart, which is the deeper part of the mind, becomes the physical body mind conduit to this mystery that is beyond existence and non-existence, that then uses it like a wheel to drive through this life until the car is old and the driver departs. I had no idea I was going there.
Well, some of the things that popped into my mind when, especially during the moment of silence, if we want to call it that. There's a professor from Stanford. His name's Susskind. He's a physicist,
Yeah, I think
and he's a black hole physicist.
right.
And
That's right. I've seen him on
you know,
TV.
he's an interesting guy. And I saw his lectures that have been published, and all of them, and it's many hours dealing with, like, starts with just general physics all the way to black hole theory, right? And he has this he's been really trying to understand this concept of lost, if there is such a thing as lost information in a black hole. Now, it sounds like a simple question, but it's actually a pretty deep question,
It's
because
like the
it
Akashic
comes to
record.
it comes to, this is a good point that you bring up, but let me walk the ones that are listening through this. So he has this question: is information lost in a black hole? Because the assumption is that in a universe, nothing is created nor destroyed, that all information has to be somehow maintained. The problem is that once something gets into a black hole, how does it get out? Now, Hawking came up with a concept that over time, a black hole will eventually evaporate. So you're evaporating the information back into, I'll call normal space. All right. Now, the problem comes in is that a black hole may be accreting faster than it's evaporating. So it's sucking more information that you supposedly can't see anymore. All right. So there's this concept that Susskind came up with where it's called a hologram. All right. And it deals with the event horizon around a black hole. So if you go over the event horizon, you're in the black hole, but you can go right to the edge or right before the edge and still be able to kind of, like, as a metaphor, look into the black hole, but not be in it. All right. And lose information. So at the event horizon, all right, because this is like a ball that is sucking stuff in, right? And you can't see anything because no light can come out, right? It sucks everything in, right? So the thought here is that there's information in the black hole that you can't obtain, but at the event horizon, or the surface of this ball, right, that you can't really see, but right at the event horizon you can see something. There is this holographic projection. So there's no duality, there's no double information. It's a projection of information on the surface at the event horizon. So the information is at the event horizon, but it's a projection of this information that is in this singularity in this black hole. So it's an interesting concept, and I was reading I was reading some Hasidic books, and they were talking about Ein Sof, and Ein Sof is kind of like the infinite one, all right, and or Ein Sof is infinite light, all right. So the infinite one, or this infinite space, or concept, um, can project information into Chokhmah and Binah. So you can go into like wisdom and into understanding. Or Ein Sof is higher up. Okay. So that's like GETTR, right? In Kabbalistic terminology. So there is kind of like this, you were talking about this, infiniteness and in this uh the universe has no there's no beginning of this abyss, that you were describing. And I
No
was
end.
just I was at no end, and I'm thinking that through or ain't, because that's the infinite one, the or ain't, this ain't Sof, and then or is is something that is coming out of or ain't Sof, but it's a light that we can, it's like right at the event horizon. So we can get a grasp of that spark in wisdom, in Chokhmah, and then expand that spark into understanding or Bina. So there's this, I don't know why that popped in my mind when you were doing that, but I just, and that's just something that just, it's
Well,
random. It's a random thing that happens, but
our hints have become more profound, but they're still hints. The black hole is also just a hint. Um, because even the black hole we're witnessing from outside the black hole. I would just say even the movement of infiniteness and is a movement. So it is something that believes that it exists and does as a phenomenon. Even these are very profound phenomenons, but the witnessing consciousness is beyond the black hole, beyond memories, beyond it is not even a prisoner of beyond or here now. It does not exist, and it does this perfectly. It's always new. It's in everything. You can you can't see it, but like light, you can't see it, and that's why mystics use light as a metaphor so much. You can't see the light, but you could not, like the light that's striking my face and giving dimension to this room, color and shape to my face, my beard, my eyes, is a something that's just a happening that the light has no interest for or against. But this, from something that's invisible, to use this metaphor, it is producing a form, colors. If there was no light, you would see nothing, no colors. I mean, as a kid, it took me a long time to realize that. I always thought, well, if the light's off, I still got this pink face, and well, I didn't have the white beard then. And when I realized that no, without the light, there is no color. That appearance changes. But this thing that I actually cannot talk about because every word I'm saying is a lie, even infinite uh, hides, like the singularity you were talking about, when the way Buddha would respond to people say, another way of putting it is, oh, so it's all one, a singularity. Buddha would say, not two is the better way to say it. Because if you talk about oneness, you suppress the manyness. If you are a person that follows positive thinking, then you will never see what immense negativity you have towards negativity. And so these things kind of show themselves, these subtler identities and things start appearing before the witness. And everything that you witness is not the witness. Everything it is doing, even the universe, even the black hole, who's black on one end, but probably all light and showering all its memories on the other side. And in some way, maybe the black hole could be a kind of construct of what the great god Narada, who the god of the sky, is the man, is the god in Hindu lineages that created the great library where all things are that have happened, are happening, and will happen are all at once available in this vast library, which means the library of the sky, Akash. Um, it is odd that an Indian friend of mine, when I was just starting as a sannyasin in India, he taught me a little bit of Gujarati, and I love this phrase. It's "Hu akash tarfe chahuchu." I gaze upon the sky, Akash. And the Akashic record is the sky library. It's it's the emptiness. The sky is the emptiness. It's beyond the singularity. And for some mysterious way, and I'm starting to experience it or become aware of it. Like if you're one of my favorite, I use the Osho Zen Tarot deck, and one of my favorite suits, which seems to come up a lot in the transmissions that I do with people, is it's all about being right here, right now. It's the pentacles in the old tarot, but it's called the suit of rainbows because of the fact that if you're standing exactly in the right place where you need to be in the here now on terra firma, you're grounded. You will see the trine harmonics, that angles that are like a prism that allows you, looking at the prism with the other two 120-degree angles, the white light becomes all the rainbow lights. You will be the person that sees the rainbows because the rain, your body, and the rainbows are in that perfect 120-degree trine that allows you to see the harmony, the hidden harmony. But if someone else is standing this way or that way, not where they need to be, not really on terra firma in the here and now, they will never see it. And in this metaphor, Osho said, if you can just be here now and go through your life, experiencing it, being totally into your life, but not of your life, a Buddha in the marketplace, not of the marketplace, then you live your life more fully because your life is a temporary happening. And the strange anchoring of having the witness, which is nothing, be the center of it, is it attracts happening, creativity. It just does. The rainbows are revealed. The there's immense creativity that then sprouts from someone who is not trying to be creative, but just watching. It's happening to me, and um, it's just flooding creativity now, like in ways that has never been before. And it's easy. It seems like I'm just waiting for the next moment, and then
Well, you're bringing a good point here. I think ones that are, I'll call the sensitives, all right, for lack of a better term, that have stepped away and haven't embraced the TikTok and the whole social media world and it's been, wrapped up in technology too much. But the ones that are more humanist,
mm,
not techie, right?
mm,
Or if we wanted to delineate it, the humanist versus the transhumanist, right? Or the ones that are the sensitives or the non-sensitives. But these ones that are the humanists especially the sensitives that are the humanists, I think that they're feeling us. They're feeling a new source, an ore of light that is giving them like creative juice, right? They're getting some energy for a creative thing. But I think the reason is that these people, they're like an antenna. They're being able to absorb the the signal. The ones that have bought into the transhumanism, the egoism, you know, as you said, being the ruler, well, these phones, people stick their face, literally like it's like Alien, the movie Aliens,
Yep.
and their face is like sucked to their phone, right? And, that's them, so we have people that are not human, they're I human, and now
That's a good one.
and
iPad to iHuman.
right. No, but they live their life on their iPad. They live their life on their iPhone. Their Apple Watch is, it's maybe a different color, but they're all the same shape. They're all, and you start to lose the craftsmanship of a watch, and
Hmm.
the amount of time that a craftsman puts into all these different types of watches
Hmm.
versus this kind of like homogenous design now that everyone's wearing. So we're like
Save of
we're
ego.
losing we're losing we're losing the idea we're losing this idea of being,
Yeah.
and we're just a bunch of doers.
Yeah.
And so these humanists and the sensitives that are the humanists, I think, are able to get this creative signal, and they're going to be writing books, or they'll be, making art, or they're going to be wanting to be human. They're going to be wanting to. They're going to want to be. Now, part of that is going to be probably some spiritual awakening that's taking place. So, but you got these others that are, buying devices that are literally putting them into their own slavery, their own Egypt.
It's in my I have a book that used to be called Roaring 2020s, and then it's been a book that's been kind of always stuck out of the finish list for a lot of reasons. I was writing it when I was very intensely taking care of my mother in her final years, and when you're prolific like that, it's very hard to put it back into the list for publication. They even had lots of people donate towards that happening. But what has finally happened just recently is I finally come to the final evolution where I can say, yes, now I know what this book is. It's going to be all my distant future prophecies that use the mid 2020s as the launch pad, down 4,000 years of potentials. Over my life, I've queued lots of distant prophecies, my own, others, and from around the traditions of the world. And now I think I can finally get it out and have it available at the end of 2025. I might be a little too ambitious with that because it's a bunch of anthologies of themes of some of them are small books. I could pull them out. The chapters are 30, 40 pages, 50 pages, might end up being small books later, but they'll begin in this anthology. And they look at all the basic things: love, sex, death, war, politics, democracy, eugenics, uh, where the sickness industrial complex could evolve down the next 4,000 years, where pacifists are the last people to actually end wars. And actually, it is the warrior spirit that will end wars because they know what the war is. And the pacifist is a wannabe warrior, profoundly violent. I never go to pacifist demonstrations because there's always a lot of violence. I'm going to make you peaceful if I have to wring your neck. And
Sure.
so, but I know a lot of warriors because they've seen war. Well, like Scott Ritter, he's doing marvelous work in his visits to Russia as an ambassador of peace. He's I must, after what I saw today with him talking, I've got to write him. And we've never met, but I've been using him as a source and trying to turn people onto him since 2002. when he was the weapons inspector that got up in front of Senate and said, "Hey, I was ahead of that. My team and I know what Saddam Hussein has, and there's no weapons of mass destruction left. So this going to war with him is a big mistake." And he kind of became infamous for some circles of power and famous since that time. And he is so he's one of my oldest sources. And he does, he doesn't know me from Adam, but hopefully someday I'll connect with him. As most of my sources, they don't know me. But I like to share and network them as much as I can because of their value that they're doing. But anyway, it just dawned on me today that what I might do is I'll send him the actual prophecy of Edgar Cayce, the most famous of his prophecies, especially in our times. He said it in 1944, and he said something shocking then, and I would say because all the bias and misdirected understandings of Russia, even more shocking today for most people if they just use Fox and CNN as their and MSNBC as their only sources of information, or the New York Times or the Washington Post. And so what Edgar Cayce said, he had three prophecies. One in 34 was the first time he said it, and then in 38, I think the second time, or 37. And then the final one in 1944, not long before he died in 1945, where he did the prophecies of nations. And he would start, well, what of England? What of America? What of Russia? He said, Russia shall be the hope of the world, not the current Bolshevistic government, but farther down, a Russia beyond that. And they will know freedom, freedom. And America is supposed to help them. So there's something Russia as a nation is supposed to do around now, where it's way beyond it's no longer the Soviet Union, even though half the Americans or more think it's still communist Russia and the Red Star Bearer and that Putin is an atheist and all that. Absolute ignorance. And if you people don't stop being ignorant, your ignorance will kill the world, because you are so wrong about this. And so I'm two people I'm happy about right now. The other is Tucker Carlson. He finally got to Russia. He's been trying to get to Russia. The government's been trying to stop him. He's going to interview Vladimir Putin. They tried to do it a few years before, but then one of his contacts in the FBI said, "Look, I'm going to tell you this so you know that you're being watched." This person then said things about his contacts and what he was trying to do going to Russia back then. And he said, "Well, nobody knows that. I haven't told, in such a way." I said, "Well, yeah, we're watching your phone. We're watching your stuff. We know." And he proved it by saying all the things that he thought nobody would have known. So they were watching him and they were going to try to prevent him from going to Russia because they're terrified of having a man like that who's so kind of boyishly innocent and open and asks the uncomfortable questions. And and he can be wrong sometimes. He's a human being. If you're a human being, it's always right. You're not human. You're artificially intelligent. You're an artificial. They're always perfect. They never do anything wrong. Even if they blow up the world, they have a reason, or if they blow human beings up because we're creating a Frankenstein's monster that it's going to wring our neck like Dr. Frankenstein had. And the so shortly on Tucker tonight, or Tucker Carlson, which has now a larger audience than CNN, Fox, and MSNBC, and a lot of legacy networks have. So this is another wonderful thing that's opening up. Whatever people think about Elon Musk, he's a complicated genius. I don't agree with everything he's doing, but I very much respect what he's doing, because he's the Howard Hughes of our times, only he's not crazy like poor Howard. He is a visionary. He made a very brave move, spending $42 million to buy Twitter and turn it into the only porthole that is wide open. And I even noticed that for the first time, I'm agreeing with his checkers. You know, they're not like saying, this is what it is. They're just saying, well, here's the information that we know that this is actually from something that happened in 19 this, and you can check it out here. And so it's like that. They're not like being uh, woke thought police. And just saying, well, actually, this picture is from something that happened over there. You can see it here. Or this is not about China. This is something else there. And sometimes they get a little, the worst they do is they go, well, we have no information to prove that. Well, I mean, you have, then that's just an empty phrase. So they sometimes do that with some of the guys. But anyway, um, Scott Ritter has just come back from his second journey to Russia, and he has really been trying to. He says, "Look, people say, oh, you want to become a Russian?" I said, "No, no, I'm going to live and die as an American. I'm an American, but I don't see why we can't be friends with the Russians." And neither did Edgar Casey, our greatest prophet of America. He saw that America was supposed to be a brother helping the Russians be the hope of the world, not what we're doing now. In fact, he turns and he says, he basically, in his kind of convoluted English, he is saying in trance that, and you know, and you think about freedom, or you think about and he just, long story short, the hypocrisy of Americans who preach what they do not live by example. And it's his list of things exactly what the United States is now, which means the United States is not fulfilling its destiny to help Russia be the hope of the world. It wants to destroy Russia. And if Russia's destroyed, this world will be destroyed. Because what Russia is doing is exactly what Edgar Casey is saying. And it would take me hours. Maybe I should do another 3, 4 hours at another time where I name the reasons. That might be a show we should do. And even then, I'm just touching the surface. If you read HogueProphecy.com, if you become for $60 or at an automatic payment, if you become a member of my Hogue Prophecy reports, you will get an email with my a PDF file. I go a little low tech so that I can say what I need to say and not have some sensors above me. So, you know, I'm kind of doing something that's going to be the way of all you phone folks future too. You're going to have to go back and do something that is old tech because they'll be trapped in their higher tech and you will be able to communicate with people.
Mhm.
And so I'm kind of a first person doing this in a way. I think there's probably others that use PDF files, but they're very beautiful. It's a very beautiful cyber magazine, the Hogue Prophecy Report, and it and if you, I'm working on getting the archives for that open. I have the archives for everything up to um, the present, going back thousands of articles all the way back to the year 2000. That's already open and free on my archives page, but I'm still trying to get it reformatted so it doesn't look like a little chicken print, you know, on your phone. Um, there are things like Liquid, Adobe Liquid, that are nice programs, free programs you download, and you then see all the text exactly as you want it in whatever font you like and readable, not having to move it around, and which is really killing my audience. But that'll all change soon in a few months. But you can see it on my website, the free samples. That's easy to read. And anyway, if you join it, and then eventually you can look back at all the things that I've said, there's immense details about what Russia has done. I mean, the fact that Russia has had been a pivotal part in creating the BRICS nations to had tried very hard to negotiate a peaceful solution about this problem with Ukraine, and was stopped every way until the only solution left was politics by any other means. And they're pursuing it just as totally as they tried to do it through peace. So this thing will end in Ukraine. The Nazis will be defeated and erased from European politics, hopefully, just like the Nazi Germans. And that was the last thing they had left, because they have, and I chapter and verse, they have tried so hard not to have this war happen. But NATO just kept advancing, because clearly NATO's agenda, NATO does not exist without trying to live to destroy Russia. So it took a long time for the Russians to understand the same kind of madness that happened in 1941 with Hitler and the Soviet Union, Hitler invading it with the object of destroying Russia and annihilating its people, is they see it as back again, even though they're more clever about it. It's the same thing. Europe has a desire to break up Russia and exploit it and enslave it and use all of its commodities as the biggest commodity center in the world. They're envious of it. They're jealous of it. Dostoevsky is right. Why do Western Europeans hate Russia so much? People who hate people so much like that have done some injustice to them. And that's why they hate their victims. Russians have been victimized by Europe since Charles XII invaded in 1700 in the Northern Wars, and then Napoleon tried his hand at it. He was absolutely destroyed. Did not understand the Russians any more than Charles XII of Sweden did at Poltava, where he was his Waterloo. And then the worst of them all up until today, which is the worst because it's nuclear war potentials, but Adolf Hitler went in and killed 27.5 million Russians and devastated the country. And they turned around and defeated him in Berlin. And I tell you, if we all owe thanks to Russia, whatever form it is since the Soviet Union, because if Russia did the heavy lifting in World War II and the heavy dying, and actually China is a close second. They lost 20 million fighting the Japanese. And what does the West do in its Normandy celebrations? It does not invite the Chinese or the Russians to be there, but it invites the former Nazis and the Imperial Japanese fascists and the Italian former fascists. The enemy in World War II get to walk on the beach arm in arm. And the two representatives that did most of the fighting and dying to win World War II are not there. And so, but even with that, Russia has always been ready to negotiate. In fact, they almost got a peace solution at the end of March of 2022, early in the war. They came this close to actually preserving Ukraine. And then Boris Johnson came in. He was the gopher for Biden, and he threatened that the West would pull out. And so Zelensky tore up the contract and went back to war. And now the Russians said, well, okay, no more. We're ready to hear you. We're ready. We're open to negotiation if you say something intelligent, not like, oh, well, before we talk, you have to basically capitulate to us. Well, no, we're winning this war. You're losing. What would you say if Hitler came up and said, well, we'll speak to you, but all you allies have to go back and disarm, and then we'll talk to you? I mean, that's cuckoo stuff. And Mr. Zelensky does not have the formidable forces that Hitler had. And he's a comic. He's a quack. He's a man who plays pianos with his nards. It's actually a funny skit. I love the skit. He was he's gross, but he's actually a good comic. And I agree with Scott Ritter, who did an amazing documentary about it, how it's all began. And he showed long excerpts from The Servant of the People, the show that made people love him so much that they decided to make him the real president. And he was good. He was good at that. Comedy, satire, you get out of what you're really good at. And he's become this politician who's trying really hard to be Hitler in the bunker, which he isn't. He's that would be disrespectful to Hitler. He had a lot more going on than this poor fellow. This schmo is just he's a comic. He should, I hope
I
he's,
do think that I do think that Zelensky's reign is starting to crumble.
well,
I mean, he already had a show. He already
he's
had to
doing a
show
little too
some.
much of the,
Well, I mean, is that just propaganda, or is that
no,
really
no,
happening?
I have the videos.
Really?
I have the videos which he put online, and everybody scrambled to erase them. But you know how it is on Twitter. If you do it, it's done. It's all over. You can find it. Everybody can find it if you look for it. You
Uh,
just look
see,
for Zelensky high on coke, sitting in his presidential office, swinging back and forth on his chair, and he's kind of like, oh, as I was about he's speaking in Ukrainian, and he's like going, yes, he swings like this. He's high as a kite. And he often does it even in diplomatic meetings. He'll be going, his nose starts itching on him, and he's no, he's definitely a coke addict, and it is eating up his brain, and the stress is eating up his brain. I mean, I kind of hope that he'll just resign. Well, here's the thing that's going to happen to him. He has made an edict that there can be no elections. What a great Democrat he is. President Lincoln, in the middle of a bloody civil war, had an election for president. Uh, that's what democracy does. Uh, Roosevelt got elected twice during the World War II. That's what democracy does. And Putin in this whole period of time has also been elected by the people of Russia. And, we can go into that in another thing because it's all there. I show these things. Everything I'm saying, I back up with examples and sources and videos and things. So it's not just me playing the average CNN host who just says some crap and doesn't really have anything to back it up. And I know I used to work for CNN. I used to be a professional guest in CNN, Fox, and MSNBC, NBC, CBS, ABC, and public television. And then a whole lot of BBC, Deutsche Welle, Rai, Italy, Hong Kong, China. I've been around journalists since 1983, and I know the game. And I also had I never expected, I never even,
my observation is that they're superficial. The audience doesn't know this, but I went to a lecture over at the Harvard Club recently, about a month ago, and it was the birthday of Sherlock Holmes. Now, obviously, Sherlock Holmes is a fictional character, but they have a series that celebrates his birthday. Well, someone wrote a book that was in the vein of a Sherlock Holmes mystery dealing with uh, um, Diesel, the inventor that designed the diesel engine, and his death is a mystery. And so this person wrote this, a book to explain the mystery of Diesel's death, and what he thought happened versus the official story. Well, the the husband who wrote the book is married to Megyn Kelly. So, Megyn Kelly is in the room, and she seems to be the star in the show, even though it was her husband that wrote the book that was doing the lecture. But the thing is
Madonna.
that, yeah, but the thing is that, and it was a great lecture,
Mm.
and I thought he did a good job. But the thing is that there is a superficialness that when you see these news anchors, and now she has her own podcast. She's doing kind of something very similar to what Tucker is she's got her
Yeah,
own
and
kind of
she's grown with
show.
it. I think she's actually gotten less superficial. when she was on Fox, I couldn't stand watching her a moment. But I actually,
Yeah,
sure, I actually, well, she's one of my sources for that kind of view of the world.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that going independent has kind of freed her up a little.
Yeah,
And she's
I think
much
you're
better
right
than she
about
used to
that.
be.
You know, once you're more quote mainstream, that that maybe you have to walk on eggshells, and maybe that's the reason why she seems superficial. But it's just that when I was working at Catholic Charities in finance, I helped with managing their portfolio and doing their budgets and forecasts, and for New York for the New York division, and um, we had these galas uh, and there was a kind of a special relationship between Catholic Charities and Fox. So
Mm,
I got to
yeah,
see all those guys. I mean, and you know
yeah.
them too. Hannity and
Yeah, I used to debate Hannity.
Hummer. I
I
used,
made him flustered once.
so I just, and there's a certain when there is a certain level of just
Yeah.
fakeness, about them.
The
And
aristocracy. It's a kind of like as fake as oh, let the meat garrosh. It's just sort of like they just don't get it. They're just in their comfort zone.
Well, they
Everything
really
goes
think
are
that they're in
pampered.
that. They
They're
really believe that they are the intelligentsia.
Yeah, I know.
They look down
Nothing
on
more
them.
idiotic like than a man or a woman who believes they're far more intelligent than they are. And that goes for Victoria Nuland, Jake Sullivan, Blinken, Anthony, the Secretary of State, and Joe Biden, who used to be that way, but he's even lost that into the toilet of his brain. Poor guy. I mean, I think his
I
presidency can be defined as one thing, elder abuse. I mean, it's just there's a side of it where I'm just thinking the deep state has literally found an empty shell, and they're going to probably try to replicate that as much as possible because what is better than somebody? I mean, the real players, Joe is just like, oh, it's all the people, the factions. You always can see when the commander in chief is not in control of himself and his mind. You saw it a little with the dummy called Bush Jr. I mean, he was a real piece of dumb. God told him to go into these military disasters in Iraq and all this because he had a Neptune Sun square, which is the delusional incarnate. And now a lot of people who have more awareness will actually apply the alchemy of having that profound self-delusion and become really great at having a bullshit meter. But they do it the hard way. They have to go through their own bullshit. And it's so it's not to any of you who are looking at your chart right now and going, oh my God, I've got the square, I'm doomed. No, you could probably become if you handle the alchemy right, you could become a Buddha with it when you see your full delusions clearly. But those people, we've had three presidents out of the four who've had that sign. We've since the 21st century. I mean, it started. We had Bush, he had it. Obama had it. Bush, thought he was talking to God, a higher father, and he's just talking to his profoundly delusional, immature ego. And he had a father envy because his father was a superior president than him, and he never got over that. So I have a higher father. Yeah, yeah. Look, when you talk to God, you really get us in a lot of trouble, a lot more trouble than Poppy did, who didn't talk to God, who actually was in a war, got shot down a few times. Um, and you were in the Champagne Squadron. That was Poppy's fault too. When everybody was going to war in Vietnam, he got to get drunk so bad that he couldn't fly anymore, and then he got an early leave out of being in the Air Force or the Navy Reserve. So he was avoiding war by pretending to play it warrior. That's what makes that moment where he's coming out with a special harness under his nards that are making them much bigger than they ought to be in his jumpsuit back as a Navy pilot, and he's coming out there and he's walking with his helmet in one hand and his ball check that's continually pushed out, and ball check, and then he gets in his suit and he's standing in front of the mission accomplished. Now he didn't do that. The captain of the carrier made that, but still, it's just like Marie Antoinette probably didn't say those things, but she is that.
Mm.
It sticks even if she never did it. And the idiot captain of the admiral of the carrier, and the idiot that was standing there pretending to be a hero, uh, it, he didn't put that sign up there, but he was everything of that sign, and it completely turned on him. Insurrection began, which I had predicted. One of my best predictions was 2 years. It was on the middle of November when it was still in doubt whether he was going to win the recount of Florida, and I did a predictions of what Gore would be like as a president and what Bush would be like. All the predictions that I made about Gore, of course, didn't happen. And frankly, I think the way I read him wrong because it wasn't going to happen, you know. But Bush, it was shocking. And I went on, I think it was Ian Punnett and Coast to Coast I did with this. And one of the rare times I didn't do George on the Coast to Coast, but Ian was great. Ian's great. He was a great host. And I wrote it, I have it all published, and then I wrote it. And then I said it on the show. I said, what I see about Bush is that halfway in his term, there will be some terrorist act. And and I said maybe it's Saddam Hussein committing some terror on us in America, and then he would invade Iraq, very easily take down Iraq and Saddam Hussein, but direct America into a karmic echo of Vietnam, where things are like Alice in the Looking Glass, reversed. And so it was because of that prediction that I started deepening the study of this karmic echo things that go on, because they do seem to have the same pattern. For instance, George Bush he steps right into Iraq. It does not get support from the international community. He does his coalition of the willing, the little willies, and they go in, and then it becomes a quagmire. A Americans are getting shot and killed by thousands in the crossfire of a Sunni on Shia civil war. And he even, by boasting, bring it on, then Al Qaeda managed to come into the heartland of the Arab world thanks to that delusional man. And the thing is that uh, it it's kind of so this war happened, and he kind of made the whole mess, and that that war was a major step in the beginning of the end of American empire. I mean, I see George Bush as that
Mm.
he did that, and so that was the first president. Then Obama, he also has Sun, Neptune square, but he's a more sophisticated idiot. He could fool himself more sophisticatedly than poor old George. Um, George is a classic example. He one time said, I was doing all the chopping wood and doing all this exercise all the time, and then suddenly I had to get a triple bypass. Well, where the heck did that come from? I said, well, you're a dry alcoholic. You stopped drinking Jack Daniels and you started downing Diet Pepsi at the same volumes. No wonder you had problems with your heart. You know, you're just another kind of alcoholic. You get the buzz of sugar, fake sugar rather than the Jack Daniel blast. And so I always thought that the best way to deal with any things like that is like the way Gurdjieff had one of his disciples quit smoking. and she very consciously went through the whole thing, and then there was a month or two into it, she realized I've done it, and so she was going to tell him. And so she came to his house in Paris, and his apartment, and said, Monsieur Gurdjieff, I have quit smoking. And he looked at me and said, good, you have. Now I will reward you. Puts his hand into his suit coat, and hands her a packet of Gauloise cigarettes. If you ever smelled beaties in India, I mean, it's like very strong. Well, Gauloise are like beaties in India. They'll they'll fry your brain. And so she kind of moved to grab the pack of cigarettes and stopped. And then she moved again when she realized what all of this was about and took the Gauloise. Binary addictions are just changing the addiction. An alcoholic becomes addicted to a dry alcoholic. The real challenge, and they actually do this more in Europe. They allow people to keep drinking, but you can only have one. And they train people that way. There's none of this kind of Puritanism in America where it's all or nothing. You got to be saved or you're doomed, and so she realized that the real challenge had just begun. To smoke when smoking is right, and to not smoke when it isn't right. Don't make it a habit either way. Don't make it a non-smoking habit or a smoking habit. It's much more challenging, so anyway, Obama was sublimated his sexual desires of getting the woman who is impossible to get. And so he got the woman that was impossible to get. He persuaded her to marry him. Now, I won't go into the controversies about whether
Whether she is a woman or
it's
not.
actually, but hey, the the thing, the somebody, I don't know, anyway, so
I mean,
uh,
have you actually seen a picture of her pregnant?
I, it's a strange world.
Well, I mean, you would think that, after having two kids, that there's at least one picture that she, would have presented to someone that,
Yes, she
showed her
didn't.
being pregnant. Right. That's there's something weird about it. I
Well,
can't
yeah,
prove it. I can't
there's something
prove it. I
fishy.
don't act right, but it just doesn't, again, it doesn't pass the smell test. Right. Yeah,
And I
exactly.
think it's the reason why she always at the last minute. I mean, the newest thing was that because of the what was the OMG, the guy that does the candid camera stuff, he just did a real zinger last week where he talked to one of these young powerhouse guys who, and he's obviously he wears his glasses and dyes his hair, and it's usually he's playing a potential date, because the guy is gay, and he's playing it, and and so he's in this restaurant, and open mic is there, and the camera's on him, and this guy is spilling the beans about exactly what people think about Biden losing it, and how Kamala Harris, you cannot dump her because you can't have the first African American that has the chance to become through that glass ceiling and become the president. You cannot do it. Like, that's more important than actually having somebody capable. That's what he's just basically showing. That's the mindset. And then he talked about Mrs. Obama. That he was asked by the guy who does that stuff. Well, does you think she's going to step in the last minute and save everything? And I said, no, no, she's not going to. No, she said, I saw what they did to my husband. I don't want any of it. I think that's a very nice, different way of masking it. I don't
Mm,
think she
mm.
can want to get that kind of scrutiny. Well, some things might come out that some things might hang out that should
Right,
not
right.
hang out at this point
Uh,
in the mythology. you know. And it's funny because I always thought, well, she's really mannish. She's a very mannish woman, And anyway, so this helped deception square. So he kind of took that slightly unusual, if not eccentric, issue of the woman impossible to get. Well, yeah, this is an impossible woman. And he got her. And so uh and he supplemented it like Hitler did. His sexual feelings were, it was like when he used to speak to people, it was like he had an orgasm or something like that. He was like, Freud would say, oh yeah, he's getting it off of being a politician, having people love him and winning them over. Although more emphasis of Hitler, of Obama is I've got to win them over. That's his obsession with this square. And so when he got elected, and not more than a few weeks into his presidency, he was invited to the infamous party with all the leaders in news and networks that are all right-wing people, white guys, and girls, and they made it very clear to him, the McConnell and all those people and Fox people and stuff, that they're going to do everything to make sure the black man is out of office in 4 years. They'll stop everything he wants to do. And they stated it all out there. What Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, would have said when Trump actually went in and took a third of Syria after the Iranians and the Iraqis did all the fighting and dying to end ISIS. The Americans saunter in. They keep some of ISIS alive. That's why Al Tanf got bombed in Syria, wasn't in Jordan. That was a lie because America technically is an occupying force, not invited by the Syrians to be doing stuff there, sitting on their oil so they can, taking their oil in the upper northeastern third of Syria, preventing them from having the money to rebuild their cities. Their cities are in ruins. I mean, God, no wonder Edgar Casey was so pissed off at the kind of Americans that would be around when Russia's trying to end all this by not by forcing anybody to end, but actually be a major catalyst in creating a multipolar world, not rules-based orders. They should call that the golden rule-based orders, where they say, we got the gold, we rule. That would be more honest than what Blinky Blinken is talking about. But they call it the fair-based order, where we're not going to sweat what you do in your country. That's your fair. That's your like a Fourth Amendment for nations, and no more of this a preachy not American nation that doesn't live by example. And just let people evolve those difficult things on their own. And also be so respect a nation's sovereignty. Respect it. Don't try to proselytize it like a Puritan. That Puritan streak in the United States is a cancerous thing. And now it's really done itself in because now the dollar is no longer being supported by Saudi Arabia, who just today became part of the BRICS officially. All that is going now to this loose alliance of just people, a community of nations, not a, and it may eventually, I've been predicting that it may eventually create the a something beyond the United Nations, because that's also an oxymoron. The United Nations is not united. It's a place, a tool that was, laws were fixed that during the first Cold War had the Soviet Union and the United States out trying to out veto each other and stalemating everything. Now, of course, I almost wanted to work for the United Nations because, UNRWA and some of those things that they're doing are really helping people, and they're unsung heroes. And it's just terrible how all the Israeli lobby influences in the world they're trying to bankrupt UNRWA and all these things that are helping people, creating pipelines and purifying water, making food happen, all that, just because of this They're pissed off because we won't let them kill 2.4 million Palestinians in open air prison camp, um, and do the job better than the Germans did at Auschwitz. And so, and America is arming it. So this country is also going to be in the Nuremberg of the future trials. These people in our name. So anyway, um, so what'll happen is there'll be a new kind of United Nations, but it'll be the I call it the CSO or the CSO. Well, anyway, the acronym is it would be a community of sovereign nations, the CSN. We're not going to pretend to be united. Sometimes we won't be united, but we do intend as a community to commune with our equally unique fellow sovereign nations, and work things out. You know, Putin's a Libra. Libras are negotiators, balancers. They want to work things out. Um, so China and there's eventually going to be a different kind of value system, which will not be a currency, but a conduit for other currencies to trade with other members of it. That's what actually Bretton Woods wanted. And the mistake was that America's dollar, a nation's dollar, was made everybody's. That means that nation's going to control everybody. And that was not a good idea. So we learned from Bretton Woods, these people, not to do that. So Africa, there's a lot of good things happening in the world from that. There's an axis shift in the humanity's future, actually. And it's because it's working that there are forces in the declining and falling hegemon of the United States, the deep state of it, that they cannot conceive losing. And it's very, very dangerous because just like those crazies in the Knesset who are doing this genocide, they've decided that they're going to fulfill biblical prophecy as they misinterpret it, and hurl Samuel's genocide of Amalekites upon the Palestinians. and and they can't believe that they can lose, just like Hitler couldn't until the very last minute when he had his nervous breakdown, and then he gave up. He had a few more days to live, but he gave up. He even said, "Yep, I'm done. I'm over." He finally saw the light that he'd lost, and his next act was to kill himself.
Mhm.
And the ultimate death of an ego is if you're just all ego, you can't exist anymore. You know, it's very interesting. There is a point where the ego is always trying to survive destruction, will commit suicide and annihilation if it just lost everything it wants and it can't get it. It'll just nothing. And that's what Hitler did. So Obama, when he heard these guys say these things to him, he did what Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, when he saw that Trump, when he was president, he said, "Well, we won this war. We're going to take some spoils. We're going to take this oil." Completely illegal, a war crime, a war of aggression act. You know, I'm hard on all sides that are stupid. And, sometimes Trump does smart things, but sometimes he's a real gullible fool with these deep staters. And I hope he's learned, because there's a good chance he may be president. It's also a good chance that there's some legs to this talk of making the unified candidacy, and RFK becomes his presidential candidate. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but I mean, Robert Kennedy's also already going to play a spoiler. And, Trump can't do a third term. So it's like, and Kennedy's young enough, and God, he's pumping iron. He's very healthy. And I am also very concerned that things that happened in 1968 or in November 1963 could be repeated, because the deep state is being threatened. The alphabet soup agencies of intelligence. Bobby Kennedy has said he's going to finish what his uncle wanted to do, to cast the CIA, break it up. He's going to do it. And so Trump is also going to end NATO. Smart move, I think. This is and so there's a whole power era. See what I've always said, that the world would change not because of what the masses do, but because of some of the elite pulling a Lafayette, going to fight for a revolution against their own. We have three of them. We have Musk, we have Trump, we have Bobby Kennedy, all wealthy aristocrats that have gone rogue. And I've said, it's one of my oldest prophecies. I said, this is going to be, because we can't do it. We're going to need some of these princes and princesses to come off their high castles and really help us, because they've got all the money. They've got all the power. And so that's why Trump is so terrifying to them. He's done that. That's why they're doing everything, all this lawfare. And I hope it doesn't go to the next escalation when all this lawfare fails. It's I won't say the word. We're all thinking it. And we know what happened to Kennedy's past. And kings named kings as in civil rights kings. And and another guy that was named X, another amazing man, Malcolm X.
We're definitely going to be going through tumultuous times. But
But
John, we've gotten to that point where
yeah, I'm going to finish. It's also I'm just going to finish by saying this, that this move after October 10th is a whole new direction for human history. That is a reprise of Pluto's return to its natal position during the French Revolution. And I kind of started with this, and I'll end with this. It's like the architects of creating the idea as something solid to build were the Americans when it was in Capricorn. And then they had to end it through the Revolutionary War that really took off when Pluto moved into Aquarius. So from now till it peaks in 2034 through 2036, that's when the passes happen again of Pluto over its natal position in the French Revolution in Aquarius. And fortunately for us this time around, because it's always different each time, it's not 15 years hiatus. It's a lot closer than last time. And because it's going, I don't know why it is. It's one part. I just do astrology. I don't know how it works, but it works. Just like we don't know what gravity is, but we use it. and and so we are heading towards, as much as it might seem impossible, that this grip that this aristocracy has over us, it's as fragile as Russia had over Russia, the czars. It's fragile. And the farmers, which we didn't get into much, but man, oh man, that is a real beginning of people saying, and it often happens with food. It was the issue of bread that started the French Revolution. It was, when people's basic needs are ignored by the people of power, they march on the Versailles. They petition the Tsar at the Narva Gate. And you might shoot them down when they do, but that just led a dozen more years later to the Bolshevik Revolution. I mean, for good or bad, revolutions happen. Now the question is, I don't call these revolutions, I call them react illusions. And the only revolution that's really happened is when people remember the lost Christ consciousness, the Buddha. When they rediscover their lost innocence as a seer, fully awake to what it was like unconsciously to be sleeping in the mother's womb and understanding as a sage that now you've come full circle to full attention and consciousness of what you brought as a gift to the existence when you're by your birth, as every human being is. Any potentially sentient being is this gift. And so what you discover is you have your mind, you be able to work and think and commune with other people, but you become that child inside that has no identity, who deep down is not a burden of shoulds, of needing, having you are in the world now, but you're not of it anymore, and you can then play in the world more efficiently and more spontaneously with your intelligence engaged in the present, and and so the sage, he says that the womb is, Osho said to me, the womb is a very, very small example of the vastness of the existence. It becomes your whole womb, all of it, endless beauty, changing. You are, it doesn't matter what happens in your life after you remember this, come home to this, whether you're successful or a failure, whether you're that guy in the Zen statement, walking in Zen, sitting in Zen, where no matter waking or sleeping or doing or non-doing, he is in a state of peace, even when the samurai sword is unsheathed and thrust to him, he is smiling. So then whatever happens in the happenstance of the world, you are in it, but not of it. You're not identified. And like the child was in the.
All right. Well, thank you for being on the channel, John. We're going to be doing this again. Hopefully, we can go a little bit deeper with the Casey story.
Yes.
And
I think what I should do in the next one is I'll print it out and read it, and then take it line by line,
I,
and
I
and
think
talk more about how I spoke to 64 million Russians and introduced it in 2017 on New Year's Eve after Putin made his presidential message to the Russian people. I came on for 2 hours. 64 million Russians saw it. So I had accidentally on purpose, I had a part in delivering Edgar Casey's prophecy, an American. It was filmed here. I didn't go to Russia. I wouldn't mind visiting Russia. I'd like to visit a few of the battlefields that I got killed trying to defeat Russia. Like in 1812, I got killed there. I was on the French side at Borodino. I could probably
so.
find where I got shot through the torso by a cannonball.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, just to remind the audience, the links for John's website are in this video description and all the videos that I have been doing with John. So please click the link, go to the website, purchase his periodical, uh, sign up for a reading, purchase his books. I mean, he does great work. So help support John. But again, John, thank you for coming on to the show, and we're going to do this again, and we'll go deeper into the whole Casey thing.
Yeah.
You have to wave goodbye to everybody before we stop the recording here. Okay.
Goodbye, everybody. I love you.
All right. Let me stop the recording here.